Special Advisor to the President on Economic Matters. And good morning to you, Mr. Fashua. Great that you're able to join us this morning.
Good morning, sir.
All right, then. Now, we haven't, introduced you as Tinubu's Special Advisor on Economic Matters. The President has been preoccupied indeed among his very wide plate. He's been concerned with this. He's been traveling on it. So I thought we might be able to get the benefit of your insider knowledge as to the 6-month, shall we say, scorecard. Now, let me start by way of trying to understand what's going on with the, experts have called it an achievable, if ambitious, goal of an annual GDP of 1 trillion naira in 4 years. Maybe if we could start from there.
US dollar.
Yes. US dollars.
Actually
1 trillion US.
1 trillion US dollars, yes. Global GDP is $100 trillion. The United States is only just nudging about 20 trillion.
Okay.
And close on their heels is the US, the China as well, around 18 trillion. Those are very large economies.
Okay.
So we are somewhere around $450 billion. Even though the depreciation of the naira has not quite helped that, because that would have impacted it somewhat. In fact, I think there was an IMF number that came out last week about 390 billion or thereabout. But like the Yorubas will say, it's a case of the ram that walked backwards, going to bring more power, firepower. So basically, yes, the president has, as a visionary, and that's the role of leaders. Leaders do two things. Let's call it three. Number one, they envision. So where they are sitting and seeing way forward, followers have to try and see through their eyes. So leaders take calculated risks. Managers and followers are not empowered to take such risks. And thirdly, leaders also take action. Okay. So the president has come with this vision. On the part of the rest of us, the idea is to rally around that vision. And now, so I've seen a lot of people criticize that vision.
Okay.
But that's because they are not leaders as well. Because if a leader says, look, we can get to $1 trillion, and in 2026, if we do the right thing, in fact, the idea was to first of all achieve that in 2027. But recently, the president reviewed it downwards and said, listen, why can't we get to this point in 2026? And I mean, I don't think any follower, any subordinates, you can't look for something better than a leader that can challenge you constantly. And so if we're able to get to 800 billion or 700 billion, we would have been able to stomp our chest and say, hey, we did something good. And I think it's doable if some of the other things that are being planned come into place. As a matter of fact, I was looking at some of for example, look at the way the economy has been recalibrated. We're looking at new sectors now. For example, we never had a blue economy. We never focused on it. The potentials of the blue economy is endless. Even in fisheries alone, let's not talk about the Masa, MPA, the ports, and all of those, In fisheries alone, fisheries is one of the main contentions at the World Trade Organization. And Nigeria is not optimizing its fisheries at all. In fact, some other bigger, stronger, wiser countries that come into the territories of countries like Nigeria, not only Nigeria, most of the African sub-Saharan countries, they come into our territory to fish because they have the technology. And we're not getting the value of those, So blue economy, the president created a new gas ministry. So we have a blue economy ministry. We have a gas to focus on gas. Our gas is basically largely untapped, as where we're still flaring a lot. Now with the ministry in charge of that, we should flare less and get more value for that. We have a new ministry in housing alone, just housing. It used to be merged with works. At some point, it was merged with works and what else? You know, we had 3 ministries in one, and power. Can you imagine that? I mean, so how much focus would we have put on housing? Now we have a ministry that's just in charge of housing alone. So you can begin to say that if we are able to get the GDP to grow in this area, in the area of blue economy, gas economy, housing economy, steel, an economy in charge of steel, which that gentleman who's the head of the ministry is basically saddled probably with, look, make Ajaokuta work, make Alaja work, make Oshogbo come back to life. Those are the steel rolling mills and all of that. If you can get 50%, 60%, achievement in those areas, I assure you what that will add to the economy alone. We have a ministry in charge of creatives alone, the creative economy, the young people of Nigeria, the ones that are running skits, the ones that are comedians, the ones that are artists, the ones that are even tech creatives and what have you. Imagine if those could work. So nobody should say no. Nobody should, naysayers, like I always will say, I'm in for a rude shock, because I know this president is serious-minded. He takes no for an answer. He doesn't take no for an answer. And, he's firing on all cylinders. We haven't started to see many of the manifestations of some of these things I mentioned.
Okay.
But by the time they start to come, they'll come in torrents, I assure you.
Indeed. I can imagine that you would have seen that people know, or at least they should know, that you yourself joined the cabinet from, having made your chops as an entrepreneur. And if the one thing that an entrepreneur is a visionary. So you are keyed into this. I can imagine that. But let me ask you, first of all, you spoke about the blue economy, and in speaking about that, you talked about some other countries entering our waters for fishery purposes. Is that allowed? What's going on there?
No, it's illegal, but there are gray areas. See, there are basically about 2 or 3 big issues with the WTO, where our sister is the Dr. Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala is the DG. The first consideration is fisheries. You'll be shocked that the fisheries, some countries have overfished. Some haven't fished enough. And those who haven't fished enough, because in fisheries, you need a lot of technology to be able to do a lot there. And we're talking of trillions of dollars. And so the bigger countries are able to do 1 or 2 things and get away with it. So the smaller countries have been on the neck of the WTO to prevent this, the cheating that's going on. So it's not just Nigeria. It's like I said earlier, it's most developing countries that have that problem with the developed countries. Countries like Japan, China, USA, they're very big in those areas. I mean, these are things that people don't consider. The second issue they agonize about in the WTO is e-commerce. And other countries believe that the US is getting too much advantage in e-commerce. We're allowing a lot of the big companies that are domiciled in the Silicon Valley to get away with much. They only pay taxes, for example, to the United States. Meanwhile, they're making their money from everywhere else in the world. They've been covered for too long. And so smaller countries are saying, what can we get from these guys? You can see that even countries like France, they put in place what they call a Facebook tax, which is about taking money in terms of taxes from companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google, Microsoft that make a lot of money from everybody in the world. Nigeria is also thinking in that direction. The third one is around the United States always complains about China and dumping and devaluation of Chinese currency, some sort of beggar thy neighbor policy that ensures that China keeps selling a lot of its exports to the rest of the world, especially the United States. So those are just issues that the WTO is having to contend with on a daily basis, and they haven't been able to resolve some of those issues. So that's just by the way, that's the blue economy alone. And I think that with us being having a ministry in charge of blue economy, those kind of issues will be principal to them. But given the fact that even in fish, we import over $1.5 billion worth of fish every year, and we export something close to $50 million worth of fish. So we also export a little bit on the side, but what we import is way, way above what we export. For example, Norway, we are one of the biggest customers on this stockfish. Some people call it Oporoko and Co. You'll be shocked how much money that is. There was a time Nigeria tried to restrict that trade a bit, and they came running to Nigeria begging that please, we shouldn't. Yes, in fact, I was very spot on. As of 2021, we exported about $49 million of fish and crustaceans, whereas on the flip side, we imported about 1.5 billion dollars worth of fish.
The other thing, of course, is I think recently I heard that over in the solid minerals sector, I think the minister there was saying that there were plans that, look, now people are going to have to, in addition to extracting, also do some value adding from here, as opposed, that also should count for something, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. I did mention Solid Minerals Ministry earlier, though it's as if we created a new ministry with the achievement very quickly of Mr. Dele Alake there. It's like there's a new vista being opened in that sector. And I think that this time around, with the push that's been made, a lot to be achieved. You'll be shocked how much minerals Nigeria has. For example, the other day, some company, I think I'll just quickly say it's a Chinese company, was sanctioned and caught for illegally tapping a mineral called titanium in Akwa Ibom State. I never even knew we had titanium. I've been joking since then that perhaps the mythical Wakanda vibranium is also in Nigeria. So in the Jos area, in the Jos and Benue area, we have coltan, columbite tantalite, which makes it into every phone, every electronic equipment in the world, and it's here in Nigeria. We have barite, which is used in the oil sector, not to talk of so many other minerals. So I think that what they're doing in the solid mineral sector now is to rapidly organize that sector. I was working on a report the other day and realized that almost nothing comes to Nigeria from the solid mineral sector, according to NAITI. Almost nothing. The little action we saw there was from gypsum, limestone gypsum, and most of that from the cement manufacturers of Nigeria, because again, limestone, gypsum, all of them are also solid minerals. Okay. So basically that's it. So I think there's a lot we should expect from there if the reforms will progress very quickly. Perhaps by 2024, we should begin to see hundreds of billions tumbling in from solid minerals in Nigeria.
Okay, so now all of this is going on internally. As we were saying at the very top, Mr. President has been on a sort of an economic shuttle, especially in recent weeks. How does all of that, how will all of that also factor into the broad goal that you've been speaking about, but have limited to what we are able to do here internally?
Yeah, very, very important, because the way it works is that the president, the vice president, they are concerned with very top macro issues. So whereas the rest of us will deal with the smaller issues and co, but they are concerned with the big ticket issues. So, and that's the way it should be. You don't expect the president to be running around on small transactions. He has set a vision and challenged everybody. So now, in terms of talking to the big financiers around the world, for example, he was in Saudi Arabia, In this world, there could be three tranches of finance. There's the one that comes from Western countries, whether through multilaterals like IMF, World Bank, or the countries like United States, UK, and co. in Europe, the so-called Western world. There's that tranche of money that could come from them. Then there's the tranche of money that could come from China, the Belt and Road Initiative. China is actually the biggest investor in Africa now, whether we like it or not, because the West kind of slacked out. Maybe they got tired. I don't blame them. But China has built roads. In Nigeria here, they've built train stations, they've built airports, and so on. They're visible investment. There's a third one, which is the Islamic finance, which is coming up as well, big time. We have also tapped into some sukuk. And yesterday I was looking at South Africa, did about 14 trillion rands, I think, of sukuk investment. So the president was in Saudi Arabia just a couple of days back to talk to them, and at a very top level, talking with MBS, the leader of Saudi Arabia, talking to investors and big guys out there to say, guys, Nigeria is open for business. And I think this is also working out for us, whether we like it or not. For example, if you look at Nigeria's stock exchange, it's at an all-time high. Yesterday I checked, the all-share index has gone to about 71,000. The last time it was anywhere near that was in 2008. And we've busted even that record of 2008. The market went into a slump. That means something must be happening with investors in Nigeria. Maybe people are looking at Nigerian investments in a different way. And that's, if you like, President Tinubu would be valid to write it down as one of the achievements the last 6 months to say, look, the stock market turned around. If there was no confidence in the Nigerian economy and its prospects for the future, nobody will invest in the stock exchange. Of course, even our banks are doing incredibly well, but we would want that to quickly dovetail to the common man. So perhaps the banks will be spoken to by CBN to see how they can lend some more to struggling businesses and small businesses. But again, also, the market is evolving. Fintechs is sliding into that space where the banks have left out. If the banks can't find it easy to lend to small companies and small ventures and so on, the fintechs are there. So a lot of things are happening out there right now. It's not all doom and gloom. I tell especially young Nigerians, it depends on who you move with. If you say that, look, there's no hope, but people are making it in this country, and the country is turning around very surely. And the people who are running government now are very, very serious-minded people who don't bat an eyelid to make sure they do the best for the country.
Indeed. And actually, I was going to talk about that, and it's excellent that you went there, because people are making it still in this country, difficult as conditions are, and honestly too, not necessarily thinking about
honestly, yeah.
Yes, so there's that. But before I go on to that, Mazi Okoroafo in Arochukwu has called in, maybe with an observation or a question. Good morning to you, Mazi.
Yeah, good morning, sir. You're good morning. You see, what the economic theory we are facing today is that at least it has made at least 70% of Nigerians to have what we call scale of preference. This issue of extravagant melody side of expenditure is no longer there. With the present nation and the present economic theory, people are now adjusting them. Before in those days, around this time of ember mode, you see people rushing, you buy new car, you buy this, you buy this. When it comes to January, February, they start complaining of looking for money to go and pay their school fees and pay their house rent. And so, you see, look, the only thing Nigerians are facing is that our level of illiteracy, our level of education, and our level of assimilation is the problem. When you see a theory, or when you see permutation of the fact, sit down and adjust their life to move forward. But the question of people want everything as usual. No longer as usual. That's why when you see they say business unlimited, they say business limited. That is the issue. But as long as the system is going on, now in those days you see people now going to from Magada to Magada phase 1 where I went to go and register their children, their new ones page. But now what do they do? They now register a child within that vicinity, so a child can take. Are they not saving costs? That is the job that any job that comes up in any place. People know they must be a side effect, but at the long run, talk about short. Let's look at the long run. I think you see what is happening in Nigeria. The young man is complaining that since we are out there facing, And they are pleading to ECOWAS. That's why they are going to court. To do what? Because
okay then. Thank you very much, Mazi. Maybe also taking from that and what you just spoke about just before that call came in, I was going to ask you that I had, made the observation that had been led by what you had said, that difficult as our economy is thought to be, there still are people making it. But the fundamentals, they're said to be, weak. And this has led us to a very high inflation rate. And this really is biting down. You said earlier that one of the great desires of the administration is for all of this positivity, especially in the future, to trickle down to the ordinary man. But as you know, the ordinary man is complaining now that inflation is not giving me any wiggle room at all. I can barely meet 3 meals a day, in spite of everything that is going on. What are your thoughts on that regarding the plight of the ordinary Nigerian?
Right. Thank you very much. Yes, the ordinary Nigerian is suffering high inflation. Although must be said that the phenomenon of inflation is not only about Nigeria. I was reading about Lebanon, Argentina, Egypt, and a few other places, not talk of Ghana, and the kind of inflation they've had to battle with, some of them up to 100%. We're at 27.33%. It's high enough, honestly.
It really
However,
is.
I think that...
I beg your pardon.
Sorry?
I'm so sorry, Mr. Fashua. I beg your pardon. I'm going to have to interrupt you to go on a break, but we'll come back and continue, pick it up from where you left it at the over 27% inflation rate. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen. Following all nationwide big and impactful stories. Without the news from every perspective. Covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
Albert Chinua Lumogu Achebe was born November 16, 1930 in Ogidi, Nigeria. He went to Government College in Umuahia, Nigeria in
Okay, we're back, and our guest is Mr. Tokwe Fashua, Special Advisor to the President on Economic Matters, and we've been having a rolling conversation on the economic affairs in Nigeria, the promise thereof, and Mr. Fashua had just spoken about the difficulty of the over 27% inflation rate, the highest in a couple of decades. Yes, please continue.
Right. So, the inflation phenomenon is a global phenomenon. However, we also should not rest on our oars. I also realize that in many developing countries, Nigeria especially, are inclusive. The understanding of inflation, which is evolving in the other parts of the world, has not begun to trickle down to this place. So inflation management is just no longer about amending interest rates, CBN, a central bank function. In fact, the truth is that the phenomenon whereby central banks are saddled with inflation is a recent phenomenon pushed by Milton Friedman in the 60s or thereabouts, to the extent that the central bank should make inflation management its core objective. That's not the core objective of central bank. That's not the reason why central banks were established. People have to go back to history. So, but in order to tackle inflation, what we need to do is to look for everywhere that inflation is coming from. Many people understand that Nigeria's inflation is supply side driven. What it means is that companies are finding it harder to produce. The cost of production for companies is higher. Infrastructure challenges, security challenges, all of that priced into the prices of goods and services that the common man, the final consumer, buys. And again, however, there's something called seller's inflation, which is a phenomenon that has been distilled in some of the academia circles abroad, whereby they realize that producers, manufacturers, and even middlemen have found ways to cover the extra cost of production or distribution and pass it on to the final consumer plus a premium. So that's why you see that some industries are doing incredibly well. For example, in Nigeria, banking, and people will say the rest of the economy is suffering. And of course, it's the role of government to go after those in granular fashion, to engage with all of those kind of producers, distributors, consumers, and sometimes use moral suasion to try and drive down the rate of inflation. So inflation is no longer what you just report, especially in this media age. If we try to use the way that the United States managed to get its inflation down after the Second World War, in the Great Depression era, the era is different now. This is an era where social media, everybody is NTA, everybody is TVC, everybody is making a post, everybody is trying to blow. And so when inflation occurs, everybody goes to report. And in reporting, panic comes into play. And when panic comes into play, inflation goes up even further as companies are adjusting all of their prices. So except you understand that, look, there's a way we have to move faster on inflation, not just sit down and be price takers. It's going to take much longer for inflation to come down. So it's not just a phenomenon for central bank alone. It's a total phenomenon. The fiscal sector will have to come in. Even the private sector will have to come in. Even the media sector will have to understand that, look, if what we're doing is reporting inflation as it occurs, and everybody wants to be the first to break the news. However, all of us also go to the market. So we're doing ourselves. We're shooting ourselves in the foot, However, indeed. A little bit of inflation is okay to encourage producers in the market. But what we're seeing now is there's a big role that distributors, middlemen and co are played. For example, food inflation is what drives our own inflation. Food inflation is the highest. The last time was 31.52%, and how does this occur? Is it the farmers getting more of that money? No. The farmers are not even getting anything from the increases in prices. Different kinds of people, associations of traders. And I was reading something by the former commissioner for cooperative and trade in Edo State just last Friday, where she said that those are the people that always frustrated their effort. And it's true. Traders Association, commodity brokers, smart people are stepping in the fray. And they're the ones making most of the money, not even the final seller, not even the farmer. Except we know all of those things and are abreast with the information, then we begin to drive down inflation. And of course, that's what we're doing from where I sit.
Indeed. And thank you very much for making that point about so much being added on in between the real producer. There's too many traders, too many traders in the system, it has been said. But this also leads me to something else I was going to talk about. The president, way before he became president at his annual colloquiums, had always been talking about the importance of human capital development. Now, you're not going to get this without education. And even our guest, I beg your pardon, our viewer, Mazi Okorafor, that called in earlier, his bias is always for education of the masses. Now, we're talking here about needing to have producers, more producers than traders, people who actually are creating something, whether it be in the area that you mentioned, the creative industry, or something tangible. We need to be creating something. But you're not going to get that, are you, if you don't have an educational infrastructure that is leading to knowledgeable, a knowledgeable citizenry. If people just come out on all the knowledge that they do have is how to turn 1 naira into 1 naira 50 or 2 naira, and that is the end of their education, it's really about adding rent onto something, isn't it? As opposed to knowing that whether it be agriculture, whatever the preferred field is, we are being told that we have to be producers more than consumers that we currently are thought to be.
Well, thank you. Your question is not even double-barreled. It's several barrels in one. It raises the issue of what we call entrepreneurship in Nigeria, which I've always critiqued, that that entrepreneurship we're talking about, many of the times it's just a cry for help, a struggle to survive. Somebody is selling something, pushing something in your face, and I don't think we even need more of those. We have 37 million nano, micro, small, medium enterprises in Nigeria, between 37 and 40 million of them. So already it's enough, and they haven't actually added that much to, if you like, to the GDP growth, if you like. So perhaps we should be thinking of encouraging a lot more of our companies to be able to compete globally, starting from West Africa into Africa, and also globally. Honestly, we need more Dangotes, more Buhars. We don't have enough of those guys for now. We need more, because the companies that came here from Korea, from China, from America, from Britain, that's how they were. I mean, recently they've been talking about the exit of GlaxoSmithKline and Sanofi, and Sanofi and co. But the point is that they also came in here, and their exit also creates a new vista for Nigerian businesses to step up as well into the spaces where they are. So there's one issue of entrepreneurship and the kind of entrepreneurship we're doing. There's the issue of a lot of people who criticize Nigeria the most. Those people who perhaps maybe they're in the financial sector at one level or the other, they maybe all they do is trade the dollar or trade something for a commission and all of that. We need to reinvent those spaces. Of course, the basic needs of Nigeria, which is one of the focus of the Tinubu government, our food. That's why they declared a food security, an emergency in that area. Food, shelter. That's why we created a housing sector to say we should be able to shelter ourselves. Clothing, encouragement to that sector. After which we can begin to talk about the other sectors that are tangible. We need the tangible sector. We can see there's a growth of even things like car manufacturing or even assemblage in Nigeria. It's a good place to start. There's a growth of it. We need more investors in that area. We should actually look inward and say, okay, what are those things that take most of our money? Even technology. You can see what's going on in the digital sector under Minister Bosun. The kind of encouragement is given to many of the young people. Even in the Vice President's office, there's a project called the IDICE, which is basically targeted at the creative economy and the digital sector to encourage young Nigerians, to train them, even make them ready for the world, to be employed from anywhere in the world, apart from creating value here, to create employment and all of that, targeting more than 3 million, 4-5 million youths, directly and indirectly. So the sky is the limit. We know what the issues are, and I believe that we're going to achieve something in this area.
Okay, you spoke there saying that we need more Dangotes, more Buas, and you also spoke about the housing need. Everybody knows about that. You'd spoken earlier about the Ministry of Housing. But as you well know, the price of cement, for example, just went crazy, just went haywire. But of recent, we've been hearing that people like Bua have actually been making efforts to, bring down the price of such an essential commodity as cement. I don't know if Dangote is following suit or not, but we heard in the news that Bua, for example, was making are those kind of things? Do they sort of give you hope that everybody is working?
Yeah, I lost you for a bit, but I heard the part where you talk about Dangote and Bua and co. And perhaps some of the issues we have there have to do with oligopoly or sometimes monopoly, a few people controlling the market. That means we need more people getting involved in that market. Even some of the issues of oil refining, when it was just an NPC with all the massive refining capacity, it was also a monopoly problem. We need more people. Hopefully, some of the modular refineries that are private sector owned and run will give them some chase and create more value for the consumer to be able to have options. So, but certainly we need more companies that can tackle the. Otherwise, like in football, they say attack is the best form of defense. If you set out in the football match, which is the game of life, to only defend by ensuring that people don't come to your territory, you will never score a goal. That means you can never win a match. And we need to begin to score some wins as well. So by every means, we do need some of our companies. We need more youth to take on the world. Let's even leave the Dangote Zambua. We need more innovation. We need more apps that can solve problems. We need more fintechs that can engage in solving different problems. Okay, but beyond fintechs, we need more technology. If we challenge our youth and direct them well enough, they will come up with solutions that are tech-based that will solve the problems we have in job creation, in the environmental sector, in the security sector. Just bring it on. Whereas even in the food sector, now is the time to encourage our young people who are more tech-savvy, whether home and abroad, to begin to think about, when you think about, innovations that can solve problems, and that's the subject of my PhD dissertation several years ago. So when you think about solving local problems, then you can scale to the rest of the world. So, for example, we're here using this Zoom innovation by some American young chap. Thought about, so how can I get people to see each other using some platform, leveraging on what existed, and was able to create, and perhaps today billions of people around the world use Zoom. So in the same way, if a young Nigerian says, I don't like the way Nigeria looks in some places. We have all these problems with dumping of refuse everywhere. I don't like the fact that we don't have ambience. What can I do using technology to be able to create a new vista, to create something new, to make my country better? You'll be shocked. The thing about technology is that it can be applied to everything. Every phenomenon in the world can be made better, can be innovated, to make life better, and that is where the money is. And they should also not be afraid to take on the world, just as some other youths in other places have been able to take on the world, to the extent that we wake up every morning and we're donating money to them, we're giving them money, we wake up every morning, and even when we sleep, they're taking money from our pockets, because even when you're sleeping, your phone is updating, or some app on your phone is updating and what have you. And when it updates, that's why you see that it will ask you whether you're connected to a Wi-Fi, because it needs to take money. If you do your update without the Wi-Fi, you realize that in no time, your data balance is gone. So that update is also you giving money to the creator of the app and what have you, giving them money to put the latest innovation of their own product on your phone. So you see that there's no escaping them, and that's the new world we live in. And I think that if Africa has most of the problems, if Nigeria has most of the problems to complain about today, that means that it should be our youth innovating to solve those problems. We shouldn't wait until outsiders who are not even concerned come here to solve problem. Whether it was in the transport sector, where are the apps that people can log on to? We were here when somebody brought Uber and Bolt and all of that. We should not relent until we create our own specific problems. There are places that Uber and Bolt don't go in Nigeria. What solutions are we creating in that regard? It could even be Okada that gets a message or whatever. So that's the way that the world operates and the way the world evolves. And I think that's what we should be using our brains to think about now. Let's just keep encouraging these young people, because some of us will never be able to approach that level of proficiency in technology, but we have it. However, many of the young people, their minds are poisoned against Nigeria. Just yesterday, I was seeing Mrs. Abike Dabriere, somewhere in Canada, where Nigerian youths, a number of them, have gone to declare asylum, living under the what's it called, this tower, these wires, like what they call what's it called in Nigeria, living in the open in tents, okay, under live wires and so on. And I thought, well, it's not that bad, but we should always continue to cultivate our youths, because this country is theirs to make great. Nobody from abroad is going to come and do it for them. We can't abandon the country.
Well, as you said earlier, the president, the vice president, the executive branch generally, they are concentrating on the big issues, essentially persuading the world, convincing the world that Nigeria is open for business, and all the other aspects of it we've been talking about since. So I wanted to ask you that, look, the scorecard, so to speak, that if there was a scorecard, how do you think it is looking in terms of where we need to be, where Mr. President wants to be on his economic agenda this early in the day? Just 6 months in, about what?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that one thing I can tell Nigerians is that there are no more surprises coming. The president was very quick in biting the bullet from beginning, telling us, look, subsidy is gone. People criticized him, but look, he had to do what he had to do, because as a CEO of the country, he needed to know, he had to have a clear line of sight to where the finances were coming from. No stories. Like you say, well, crude oil is our mainstay. Oh, we sold crude oil. But sorry, on the way back, when we're coming, a lot of mbati begins to come up. When this one happened, when that one happened, we had to pay subsidy. We don't have any money to remit. They wanted to have a clear line of sight on that, and that's why he talked about the subsidy and ensure that, whereas the policy was made by the last administration, the idea is to stick to that policy, And of course, the unification of the Naira, that hasn't quite panned out the way it was pre-programmed, as it were, but it's also, it's not something that will keep on going. You can see that because of the effect, the inflationary effect of the official Naira chasing some black market rate, which we don't know where it's going to close today. They've slowed down on the idea of shifting to like I've always said, this black market cannot be the reference rate. And so, in fact, the next level now is to ensure that, look, even newspaper houses, TV stations, and so on, have to understand that the black market is an illegal market. It's not what you report on a daily basis. I mean, there's a black market in the U.S. You will never hear the CNN reporting on the black market for U.S. dollar. If some drug dealer wants to remit money to his friends in Mexico or Colombia, he's not going to go to a U.S. bank officially and say, send this $1 million to that guy. He's going to get the money somehow, perhaps in cash, which is what the black market does. The CNN will never, neither with the NBC or Fox or any of those people, report that rate. So we have to begin to show ourselves some level of respect. This obsessive compulsive disorder that affects us somehow when it comes to FX, reporting it on a per second basis, blowing it out, breaking news every time, Naira has fallen, this one has fallen, when in fact what the market pundits want is what the government has done to ensure that there's we used to call the NAF, it's now called NAFEM, used to be called I&E window, where trading happens rapidly on a daily basis. And it can close anywhere. It can close anywhere, plus or minus. It's totally stochastic. If I may use an econometric term, it's stochastic because so many players are there. You don't know what their intentions are. Everybody is coming to trade on that market. So it can close high today, it can close low tomorrow. Then we should allow that market to function and stop sensationalizing it. Quite a number of newspaper houses and online media would report the high. They say, oh, Naira has fallen to 1,100 on official market, when in fact, that is just the high for the day. In the same day where the Naira may have touched 1,100 in trade, on that same day, the low could be as low as 600 in that same market. Now, the newspaper house or the online media will report the high and refuse to report the low. And I think they should stop inserting too much of their own biases. Report objectively. this is the closing rate for the day. The market touched this point high, touched this point low, and let your readers decide what they want to make of it. But when you decide to report one side and then add a lot of your own sensationalism to it, because your opinion and your desire is for the naira to fall and become nonsense, just because you want to be able to say maybe you didn't support the government of the day, and sentiment, pure sentiment, just to say you want to see them, the government of the day, you want to see them disgraced. You're not doing yourself, because you're going to purchase your goods. You have to live in the same place. And even if you hate Nigeria that much, go and ask some of your friends that have, jackpot abroad, and ask them what they're seeing. They will tell you that nowhere is a bed of roses. In fact, Nigeria today, for any Nigerian, is the best place to stay. And if you want to go abroad with a purpose. There's nothing wrong with that. But never forget where you're coming from.
Okay, indeed, excellent. So from that, I sort of gather that, look, 6 months in, we're on the right track. It might not be It might not be as easy as people would have thought.
Yeah, exactly. But Nigerians should, like I said, we shouldn't expect too many unnecessary surprises. We should expect the goodies to start rolling in. There's nothing wrong in challenging the government objectively to say, now that you have done what you want to do, when are we expecting the dividends of democracy? But let me say also that there are people who are really benefiting. Exporters are having a good time now. They are benefiting from the depreciation of the naira. Those who export are getting a lot more naira for everything they export. That's also, another thing. We seem to be having a slightly better image than before. Our crude oil, we're producing a lot more than before. It went down to less than 1 million. Right now, we're at least 1.4, 1.5 million barrels a day. That's something, even the Federal Allocation Accounts Committee, they share a lot more money than they used to share. I remember recently they used to share, even in the Buhari days, 500 billion, 600 billion every month. Because of some of these reforms, now they're sharing up to 1.9 trillion every month. There was the time. Recently, I think it got down, the last one I saw was 900 billion. It gets over 1 trillion easily, month on month, meaning that the governors have a lot more money to use to do things, at least locally. Okay, I don't know about if people want to convert that to dollar, but not everything has to be dollar.
Indeed.
Not everything has to be dollarized. Yes, for local transactions, we have more leeway to be able to finance many things these days using the fact. So it's not all doom and gloom. Like I said earlier, it depends on who you roll with. If you roll with pessimistic people who don't have any hope for themselves, then you say Nigeria is going down. But if you keep your ears open and keep your eyes open positively, and you have a positive attitude, Nigeria will deliver for you.
Thank you very much, and that's a fine place at which to leave it. Dr. Tokpe Fashua, Special Advisor to the President on Economic Matters. Thank you very much once more for your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right. So, that's our program, and we're going to leave it there. Continue to be optimistic for Nigeria and the economy as it is evolving. Join us on Monday for a fresh edition. I am Iyori Folari. Do have a great weekend.